Hi, I'm Mandy Sackett with the Surfrider Foundation. Thank you for this workshop today and all the productive discussion. We're really glad to see a more cooperative spirit growing between local governments and the Coastal Commission. The narrative that the Coastal Commission is out of touch with local government's needs and simply forcing a one-size-fits-all approach is really tired, and it's a red herring. It's undeniable that commission staff are bending over backwards to make sea level rise planning accessible through the generous grant program, efficient feedback on LUP updates. Their expectations are clear with numerous guidance documents outlining the basic framework policies that ensure consistency with the Coastal Act and its intention to protect our natural coastal processes, recreational opportunities, sensitive habitat, and coastal access. There are certain baseline policies that are the foundation of the Coastal Act, our state's bedrock law for protecting the coast from overdevelopment and erosion and rising seas. Every local jurisdiction is a snowflake, but all snowflakes melt at 32 degrees. And similarly, every community's beach will drown as sea levels rise if we don't have the same basic framework of policies. We cautiously support this phased implementation approaches detailed in the 2021 action plan, but phased planning will only kick the can down the road. We prefer more obeys approach. We should not delay long-term planning as we have this narrow window of opportunity now. Surfrider and our thousands of members and supporters are poised to oppose any land use plan update that comes forward with policies that jeopardize our coast by relying on seawalls unlawfully, especially for new development or remodels, even if it's in the name of a phased approach that will, quote, consider other adaptation options at later date. We call on the commission and commissioners to use your authority to uphold the Coastal Act and to stand firm in getting LCP updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Erkeneff. Give us a second to bring you in. I think we had the wrong person that we brought in. All right, Denise Erkeneff, when you're ready.
This is Kristen. I just heard that Denise can't make it.
Okay, thank you. So Kristen, you're next. So Kristen Brenner, followed by Ashley Eagle Gibbs, followed by Staley Prom.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kristen Brenner. I am co-lead of the Beach Preservation Committee for the San Diego chapter of the Surfrider Foundation. And I just wanted to share my experiences. I did serve for 3 years on the City of Del Mar's Sea Level Rise Technical Advisory Committee that was tasked with developing vulnerabilities and adaptation plans, as well as updating its LCP to address those findings. It started out great as a very rational, science-based conversation, but after a year or so, just devolved into climate change denial and a sole focus on private property rights over the public's right to access their beaches. In the end, the city was totally unable to fend off the vocal minority of residents whose homes are at most risk, people whose homes are at 1 or 2 feet above sea level rise, so risk from climate change. And the city essentially ceded the beaches to the seawalls. They stripped any mention of any triggers for different adaptation options, or the managed retreat, or the mention of managed retreat from any of their documents. As a result, the city was ultimately unable to update its LCP because the changes it proposed conflicted with the core principles of the Coastal Act, and the city withdrew its application. So I think going forward, the cities need a lot more support if they are going to be able to uphold the Coastal Act and its core principles, like Mandy was mentioned. I am hopeful for that in Del Mar recently, the city has had quite a change of heart over the Del Mar Railway armoring that will manifest hopefully into support for better coastal planning and a more collaborative spirit, so we can complete the LCP update, because all of a sudden their tune has changed on how they feel about seawalls now that there's massive seawalls going on in front of the railroads. So local governments need to operate within the framework of the law, the Coastal Act, and the commission needs to stand firm in their role of ensuring they do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ashley Eagle Gibbs, followed by Staley Prom, followed by Mitch Silverstein.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Good morning, Chair Brownsy, commissioners, and working group members and chairs. My name is Ashley Eagle Gibbs, and I am the Legal and Policy Director with the Environmental Action Committee of West Marin, where our mission is to protect and sustain the unique lands, waters, and biodiversity of West Marin. Our work focuses on the environmental issues impacting the unincorporated coastal communities from Dillon to Muir beaches. We focus on climate adaptation, and we are a member of Marin County's Coastal Communities Working Group. Unfortunately, we know intimately the frustration that comes from not having a current environmental hazards chapter in Marin, which we have been advocating for over 10 years. We are also involved in other Marin County climate adaptation and resiliency projects, as well as our past participation in the Coastal Sediment Management Working Group. We are also actively engaged in supporting coordinated state climate and adaptation planning efforts, including the Principles for Aligned State Action and the Joint Statement on Adaptation Planning. We await the release of the residential sea level rise policy guidance. Related to adaptation planning, our priorities are focused on supporting proactive phased adaptation with triggers, long-range planning, and nature-based and blue carbon solutions, as the gentleman from Wild Coast spoke of, rather than hard armoring, which we are generally opposed to. We also support the protection of priceless coastal resources and biodiversity, public access, and equity. We support the use of best available science as our coastal villages adapt to changing climatic conditions, and we also support consistency with past LCPs and the Coastal Act. If a regional approach is taken, minimum standards must be met, as well as consistency with the Act. We know that it is no easy feat, but it is our belief that it is the Commission's role to uphold the Act and protect our public trust rights, as well as provide coastal public access for all, not just beachfront property owners, often those that travel from inland areas and use our local beaches to seek respite from the heat are not represented in these discussions. Our courts have consistently prohibited seawalls for new development, and we need to find a way to move forward collaboratively. Thank you for your tireless dedication to working with local jurisdictions and stakeholders, and to the counties and cities for their partnership.
All right, thank you. Next, Staley Prom, followed by Mitch Silverstein, followed by Anna Christensen.
Good morning, commissioners and staff. I'm Staley Prom, Senior Legal Associate for the Surfrider Foundation. As governments update their LCPs for sea level rise planning, Surfrider encourages you to require firm adherence to the Coastal Act, including with respect to its protections from shoreline armoring. Coastal Act Section 30253 firmly requires that new development neither create nor contribute significantly to erosion, geologic instability, or destruction of the site or surrounding area, or in any way require the construction of protective devices that would substantially alter natural landforms along bluffs and cliffs. Seawalls destroy the scenic characteristics of the coast and eventually limit or even destroy public beaches as they exacerbate coastal erosion. Thus, they clearly may not be permitted for new development. Also, given that they fix the landward beach boundary, they will encroach on public trust lands as seas rise and violate the Coastal Act's requirement of maximizing public access. The policy of prohibiting seawalls for new development and related protective policies have been strictly upheld by the courts. In the 2018 Beach and Bluff Conservancy case, the court found for the Commission, Surfrider, and the City of Solana Beach, upholding the city's LUP provisions restricting seawalls and bluff retention devices. This included upholding a requirement for new development and blufftop redevelopment to record deed restrictions, waiving the right to install seawalls and the like. Further, in Scott versus City of Del Mar, the court held that requiring the removal of seawalls, riprap, and a patio on the beach encroaching on the public beach was not an unconstitutional taking. Finally, Coastal Act Section 30235 narrowly permits seawalls in such construction only when necessary for structures existing at the time the act was passed, to protect public beaches or coastal dependent uses, and only when designed to eliminate or mitigate adverse impacts on local sand supply. And when conflicts may arise involving sections 30253 and 30235 in sea level rise, the Act requires such conflicts be resolved in a manner which on balance is the most protective of significant coastal resources. The maintenance of natural shorelines and ecological resources as well as public trust lands therefore trumps the desire for coastal armoring. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mitch Silverstein, followed by Anna Christensen, followed by Kyle Kelly. Mitch Silverstein.
Thank you. Mitch Silverstein, San Diego County Policy Coordinator, Surfrider Foundation. SD County is already feeling the effects of rising seas and increased erosion. Narrower beaches all over the county already disappear completely during annual king tides and even regular high tides when there's swell. Meanwhile, every LCP in San Diego County is more than 20 years old, and Solana Beach doesn't have one at all. They're mostly from the 80s and 90s, with Del Mar's 2001 LCP being the most recent. Sea level rise projections are on a whole new level since then. The LCPs need to be updated to reflect reality. Also, we see cities routinely approve development permits that don't even agree with their outdated LCPs, causing us to appeal their decisions. For example, the commission found substantial issue with an Oceanside riprap repair permit for 19 beachfront homes that we appealed last month. Local governments' refusal to comply with the Coastal Act and the Commission's guidance will ultimately sacrifice our public beaches. Clearly, these governments are under immense political pressure from influential beachfront and blufftop homeowners to focus on protecting private property as a primary concern. This is why consideration of true managed retreat was pulled from both Imperial Beach and Del Mar draft LCP updates. The Commission's role of balancing their perspective with protecting public resources is critical, and it's crucial that the Commission stands firm in that role. Preference for grant funding should go to local governments who are willing to plan in accordance with the Commission's model adaptation policies and guidance documents. It's a real shame that the states invested so much into certain LCP updates only to have the local governments withdraw and refuse to hold up their end of the bargain to plan for sea level rise in a manner consistent with the Coastal Act. We need to set the framework now for comprehensive long-term adaptation plans if we want to save San Diego County's coastline from disappearing in the next few decades. Lastly, since the interpretive challenges around existing development keeps coming up today, I want to mention that we see endless back and forth between Commission staff, city planners, and property owners' lawyers as to what that means in San Diego. We think the Coastal Act is clear on existing development and ask the Commission continues to reject LCP updates that erroneously attempt to redefine post-Coastal Act development as existing. Comment today.
Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners and working group. I am Stephanie Seekich, the Senior Manager for Surfrider's Coast and Climate Initiative. I work with Surfrider's 185 chapters around the country on sea level rise planning. When I heard that the Commission was considering walking back from comprehensive sea level rise updates and LCPs in favor for a phased planning approach, I immediately thought this new approach will undermine the state's progress on sea level rise planning. Moreover, when I learned that some counties are considering seawall exemptions in their LCP updates, I made an extra effort to testify today to urge these counties to not stray from the state's strong commitment to sea level rise planning and continue to use outdated and expensive methods such as armoring. The time is now to ensure that counties are updating their plans for sea level rise. The climate crisis is not waiting for us, and I believe that this new phased approach is simply punting comprehensive sea level rise planning down the road. Considering that the state has a budget surplus, the state should be wisely investing in proactively planning for sea level rise, and this commission should continue to seek funds from not only the state, but the federal government to help these counties update their LCPs in accordance with the Coastal Act and with the state's strong commitment to sea level rise planning. I just want to end by thanking you for holding this working group. I work around the country and there are very few states that are allowing such great public input. So we're really grateful for your comments today, and we continue to work with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea Sanchez, followed by Leslie Purcell.
Good afternoon, Coastal Commission. My name is Andrea Richter Sanchez, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Washington studying marine and environmental affairs. I'm Surfrider's intern working on the State of the Beach report this summer. I have learned so much about the different coastal laws and policies for each state this past summer. While working on this report, it showed me how great California's laws truly are because they protect the oceans and coasts like no other state in the US. That is why it was really disheartening and frankly quite disappointing to hear that the county of Santa Cruz, for example, is making a seawall exemption for a small portion of the county as an example of phased adoption. In California, we have always known that seawalls are detrimental to our beaches. Now the IPCC has echoed these sentiments because they stated in the 2022 report, they called seawalls maladaptive. As defined by the IPCC, maladaptation is when an action to adapt to climate change impacts, backfires, and has the opposite of intended effect, thus increasing vulnerability rather than decreasing it. So we urge you to follow the Coastal Act and not allow new seawalls to be built, specifically to protect new development and major remodels, for example, as the Santa Cruz County has proposed. because we all know that seawalls are detrimental to our beaches and they do not protect from sea level rise. California must maintain their reputation and continue as a leader in coastal protection. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.